Welcome to Soft Issues on Tour.
From the most important subject of how you take your tea to cyclocross, the current industry fad for flared gravel bars, and training for triathlon and Ironman, while also holding down a 60-hour-a-week desk job, Matt and Wei talk to bike fit royalty Jimmy Wilson and Chris Baneodu.
Royalties off of that.
Anyway, welcome to the Soft Issues podcast. And today we are
On tour
in esteemed,
the Royal
esteemed.
Borough of Kingston upon Thames.
Yeah, royal. We amongst royalty?
No.
Bike fit royalty.
Yeah.
Essentially. Subjective.
Yeah, we've just got a room full of bike fitters again, which is unusual, but yeah, I guess we should introduce everyone. So we've got Jimmy Wilson from CycleFit. Hello. And Chris Patagnotti.
That'll do.
Right?
Close enough.
Yeah, close.
That's it.
Go
Chris
on,
Pie. That's fine.
Chris Pie?
Yep.
Chris Pie. Chris Pie?
Chris
All
Pie.
right, we'll stick with that. From Cycling Performance, who's graciously hosting us, and who have we got in the corner?
Matt, the miserable northerner.
Yeah. Actually, two northerners.
Two northerners, yeah.
Oh,
Plastic northerner.
Plastic, I think, by now, yeah.
Yeah.
Been up there for ages.
No. What tea do you drink? Do you drink tea?
I do drink tea, but I'm not really fussy, so I can't be a northerner.
Matt's having a little fit in the corner.
Can't be a round bag, can't be a triangle bag.
Yeah.
Oh,
Those
got
are
to be
the,
square. Yorkshire tea, then.
yeah,
Yeah, it has
those
to
are
be
the rules.
Yeah.
It's quite a small space in here, though. Is it a small space to be in with another northerner who's not really a northerner?
It's all right.
I think we'll manage. We'll get
you're opposite
We'll
ends,
see how we
so
go. Yeah, we're literally sat opposite ends of the room.
Anyway, what should we talk about? Should we talk about cyclocross?
Cyclocross, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 'tis the season.
Mm-hmm.
And are you riding cyclocross this?
No, I'm probably not going to. It's my it's my second season off, just because now that I'm 50, my race is at a stupid time in the afternoon, which I can't make. So I'm gonna have to rethink, possibly find a different league to do or something.
Are you? Is that super vet? Or is it still vet?
No, it's just Vet 50 they call it. So Vet 50 and Vet 60 and above are all in the same race late in the afternoon, just before the seniors. Vet 40 was at 11:30, I think, which is much easier to get to. But yeah, so it's ageism in action, I think, probably.
Yeah, and what happens if you want to take your kids to the kids race? That happens first thing. So.
Yeah, I think you just have to wait until they're a bit older, and then you can take them, let them race, and then just leave them on their own while you race. I don't know how it works. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. You doing any racing, Chris?
It's like, racing. I'm taking part.
Taking part. You did one last week.
No, I bailed last week because I couldn't be bothered buying mud tyres. They're really expensive.
Have you done any, sure?
I've done 3. Yeah. But the problem is when you start later in the season, then you get gridded further back. So I was in the 30s and then had to ride through. But got through to like 10th and 8th and stuff in the first 3.
London League, don't they take your 3 previous?
Oh, I had a shocker last year. So
Did you? Right.
one of them I had a GoPro on, and the marshal told me to take it off.
Oh yeah.
And then I'd done it with a screwdriver, so I had to run back to the pits, and then they started the race without me. So I was like, well, I should have learned on that one, shouldn't I? Didn't ride through to 10th, so that's fine. But yeah, it's hard. It's like Vet 40s. I always expected it was going to be a bit slower, a bit easier. And it's even more stacked. Like I'd be coming higher up in the seniors, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super fit people with lots of spare time to train.
Yeah, we see it at the crits at the Vela Park all the time. You go to the 40s, like the vets race, and it is absolutely stacked. Like people absolutely bomb around, and everyone's got like a Colnago opener or something ridiculous, like just absolutely smashing their way around. It's probably I don't know. Maybe it is the most competitive category.
I think people have got a lot of experience with racing as well. So technically they're at a much better level as well. You know, when you start off in cross, what I found is it's such a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
In terms of your bike handling. It's probably about 2 or 3 times you go around a corner and touch your front brake. And then once you're picking yourself back up off the floor, you realise that's not the brake you touch. So all these technical elements that kind of take a little while to develop sort of just come with a bit of time, bit of experience, and you're finding the older guys actually are pretty good at like bunny hopping, clipping in, dismounting, remounting, and can just handle like all conditions off camber, this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you say you're a more efficient cyclist then, now that you've reached veteran status?
I think so.
Just get a little bit more kind of sensible in some ways, but yeah, more probably efficient is probably a good word for it, because you don't waste energy as much. Yeah. And you have an understanding of what's possible during the race. So technically, physically, and equally what's not worth attempting because it'll end badly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think more efficient.
More efficient. Do you do more running?
Not really. No. I do. I mean, no.
Or less running. Maybe.
Well, it's rare. It's rare that you have to run much anyway in a London League race, really, unless it's late season, because it doesn't really get wet now until December.
When you say that, it's like the last couple of races have been an absolute quagmire.
Have they?
Yeah, because we've had such a huge amount of rain in a short period of time, and then it gets churned up with the first few races.
Yeah. Or muddy hell at Herne Hill is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
It's a real
mud fest. Well, it lived up to its name, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But and what's that bike over there? Is that yours, Chris? That riding?
It is. Yep. That's my little gravel bike. I have actually used that on a cross bike because my bottom bracket seized on my cross bike. It did well actually. Did well during the summer cross, which is a great fun series if people haven't taken part in.
Yeah. So you got a specific cross bike for cross racing?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think the same as Jimmy now. I've got Trek Boon, which is it's kind of a little bit restricted outside of cross racing because you can only fit something like a 34, 35 on the rear. And the mud clearance is pretty pants when it gets really bad, but it's a heck of a bike, really light, really responsive.
Yeah. Does it matter, like kind of riding cross? Like we get that question all the time. Like, should I buy a cross bike? Should I buy a gravel bike? What's the difference? And well, actually, it's kind of difficult to buy a cross bike these days. Apart from there's not that many people that make specific cross bikes.
No. I think the main thing is I guess it's tire clearance. As Chris has just said, tire clearance. You can get much fatter tires on a gravel bike, which helps with grip generally and lower pressures. But then there's something quite nice about riding a more, dare I say, traditional cross bike in some ways. It seems a bit more of a challenge to ride around on really skinny tyres and inappropriate equipment rather than making it too easy for yourself. Yeah. But then when everyone else is riding, making it easier for themselves, then it puts you at a disadvantage, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess there's some quite distinctive geometrical differences as well between a thoroughbred cross bike and a gravel bike as well. So do you gents just want to talk listeners through some of those differences, and if they are debating between a cross bike and a gravel bike, what some of the things that to look out for in terms of geometry, handling, and how that's going to impact their ride with regards to what they're doing?
Yeah, gravel bikes generally tend to be a bit longer wheelbase, longer chainstay, and a lower bottom bracket generally as well. So they lend themselves, I think, slightly better to longer distances, I think, and kind of more constant terrain, so more maybe undulating terrain, bridleway, canal towpath kind of terrain. Whereas cross bikes are a little bit shorter, higher bottom bracket, presumably for better clearance over obstacles. But I've never quite worked out why you want that. But tend to be a bit more nimble, I suppose, and closer to a road position in many ways, I think. So you'd probably be happier on a longer ride on a gravel bike because it's just easier to get on with. But a cross bike tends to be more specific to that shorter, harder effort where handling and the nimble nature of the bike is more important.
I mean, you say shorter races, but we've both taken part in the old Three Peaks Challenge.
Oh, Three Peaks, yeah.
Hilarious fun.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you're not allowed to ride anything that isn't a cross bike for the Three Peaks still. So 35C tyres maximum, no flared bars, no suspension. And
it's probably the terrain where you would get the most benefit from having something that wasn't a cross bike, apart from when you're kind of carrying it up the hill.
Well, so it's a running race, isn't it?
It is,
It's
just a fell race with some riding in between. Yeah.
Although when you're descending down Penny Ghent, it's pretty hairy.
Yeah.
Because even with tubeless, you can't run them low because the rocks are so big. Like the risk of just flattening and the amount of people you see just by the side of the road, just repairing tyres and punctures is just ridiculous. So you're running your tubeless at 40 psi and getting your bones shaken to pieces. You can barely see what's happening in front of you because the road's shaking so much. But I think that's part of the Type A fun, right?
Yeah. Well, as you said, part of the cyclocross fun is the inappropriateness of the equipment, and you're just trying to make do with that situation. And and didn't Nick Craig win it on a flat bar cross bike?
Yeah, when it was allowed. It's not allowed anymore. So you're no longer. You were allowed to change bikes at will as well. So people were using a superlight bike just to carry up to the top, and then swapping bikes at the top, and then they were swapping to a TT bike for the road sections. Just multiple bike changes. But now you have to use the same bike from start to finish, unless you break it, in which case you can change it. But you're only allowed to change it at 2 points now, which is a change as well. But it just makes it a little bit. I guess it's more level playing field, so it doesn't matter if you've got 8 bikes. You're still only allowed to use one.
Yeah. Do you think cyclocross is still popular? Do you think people still want to do it? I feel like something's changed.
I think something has changed. I think, I think there are fewer. I think there was a peak just before COVID. I think there was a peak where there were upwards of 100 people in the Vet 40 category on some races. So you could have 300 or 400 people racing on a Sunday. Whereas now, I think it's quite a lot less than that. And certainly when I'm in my first season in whenever it was 2005, there were barely 100 people across all categories, and everyone raced together. So there were no separate races; it was just one.
Yeah.
So it was. Yeah, I guess it kind of peaked, and I think it is dropping off a little bit now. But that's gravel. I think it's gravel. It's popularity of gravel.
I think you're getting the development of little gravel communities. So big shout out to the Giro gravel crew who all ride, because
Giro Cafe.
It's just a huge amount of riders go out, and Saturdays, Sundays, Thursdays they do organised rides, and so you're getting those formation or subdivisions of even groups. Some fast road groups in London have actually got offshoots of gravel groups, and they do fast gravel now. So it's almost like you're catering for the off-road element, which is what I think people might have been chasing. And when you've got to drive an hour to a race for 45 minutes, to drive an hour back and then spend an hour cleaning your bike, the idea of going outside your front door and riding for 3 hours and having a spare hour is to me, that's gold.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, I rode through Richmond Park and did the off-road route, and it was beautiful. There's nobody on it. It's hundreds of people tearing around the park on the road. You go on the off-road route, there's nobody on there. It was beautiful. Yeah. So I totally get it, and I think the gravel scene's only going to get bigger as people find more and more kind of off-road routes to ride, and just that kind of freedom. I think it kind of cycling is all about freedom and getting out and having some fun and so on. And with the roads getting a little bit more precarious, shall we say, then the off-road seems to be the place where everyone's finding their enjoyment.
I think, touching back on your question about popularity of it, I think media has helped massively in the. One of my favourite riders, whether you love him or not, Tom Pidcock, just his exposure of people to cross I think it has increased popularity of people wanting to cross race and take part and actually not really be bothered about where they come. It's just, once you're out there, it's just you and the bike, and you're not drafting anyone. It's just down to you. So
that's one of the advantages, I suppose. One of the things that makes racing cross more accessible and more enjoyable than racing on the road for a lot of people is that if you race on the road and you get dropped after 5 minutes, then you might as well stop. There's no point. But cross, it all spreads out, so you're having your own race within a race. It's only the first 10, 15 people through the first corner who are going to actually compete for a top 10 place. But there's still battles going on much further back, which you you come back to week after week, don't you?
Yeah.
Always racing with the same people.
Yeah, you get those mini packs forming, so you have a battle within 4 or 6 riders, and it's just great fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And it very much becomes about you and that battle that you can have. And so maybe it's a healthier mindset in some ways, rather than always thinking about like, well, what can I do to kind of win the race, as it were. You just do the best.
Yeah, it's a lot more about taking part, whereas road racing is pretty soul destroying if you're not at the front.
Well, it's basically an arms race now, isn't it?
It is,
like,
increasingly.
Gone are the days of people turning up with a cab tent.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you don't have the kit, you're going to be out the back.
Yeah.
And I think that's where cross, like you gents have said, appeals to a lot of people. There's the community aspect as well. You're racing the same 3 or 4 people within the race. You see them week after week, and you become friends. And there's a community that cross kind of fosters as well, which you don't get quite so much.
You don't get it at all, really, racing. It's much more of a meeting as well, cross race, because there are people, different generations potentially racing on the same day, and it is more of a kind of there's almost like an event village all every time, whereas road racing isn't like, isn't like that at all. Couldn't be more different from that, really. I think it is more of a day out, isn't it, than
it's more like mountain bike racing where you turn up. There's the kids race.
If you're watching a cross race as well, you get to see whoever you're watching probably 5 or 6 times. Whereas road race, you might see them once or twice.
Yeah.
So I think it is a bit more enjoyable for everyone, really.
Yeah, I think it was back in 2012 that it turned up to a cross race, and I think it was at Gunpowder Park, just to watch. And the shop I was working at then were giving like some prizes, so I was kind of there as a representative. And I remember, I think it was like I don't even know how old he is now. It must have been like the under 10s or under 12 race or something. And no idea of the kids that were in the race. There was this kid just miles up the road. And I was just like, he is one talented individual. Like bike handling, he was just on a different level. And it turns out it was Ben Tullett. And so you're getting all these kids that are honing their craft, and it's giving them this like exposure to racing at a very early age. And then they're getting some success, so it motivates them, and then the parents are just almost happy to support them. But it just allows them to kind of develop as a rider, regardless of their age as well, because kids just develop at such a different rate that 1 year they might be getting smashed because someone's had a growth spurt, and then all of a sudden it starts to become apparent who the talented riders are physiologically and technically. So I think it's such an important scene to keep alive, because kids on road, I mean, you're not going to do it during winter, but give them the ability to learn how to handle a bike in all conditions, race well, develop anaerobic qualities, and you're setting that kid up for a great experience later in life.
Well, Pigcott's a great example as well, just coming from an off-road kind of background and translating that skill onto the road. And you can see his descending kind of prowess. Just absolutely.
He's all right.
Yeah, he's all right. But I don't know. Is your daughter racing cross, Jimmy?
Not yet. No. She's. I think they have to be 7. I think before the first race they do. But she'd be up for it. Yeah, she likes the whole experience. She enjoyed going to the races. Yeah. She's got a little mountain bike, so she can probably at some point. I mean, she's not like technically brilliant yet, but a work in progress. But she really enjoys it.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing for kids out there. Like, I took my daughter out.
Well, like I was saying before, we rode to Hampton Court, and the enjoyable bit was the 2 ice creams.
What, for you or her?
Well, each.
Well, the enjoyable bit about this podcast was the donuts beforehand.
You're welcome.
Yeah, pretty good.
Well, they're not just any donuts, are they? They're.
Should we give a shout out, see if we can get some free donuts? Urban legend, you nailed it. Less fat, less sugar, less calories. #.
The ironic donut.
Yeah, I'm going to eat something that's low in calories, so I'll have a donut. It's like not quite feeding the mindset. Could have got some fruit, but
does that mean you can just have more?
I think so.
That's the idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was an apple donut, wasn't it?
It was good, wasn't it?
It's got fruit in it.
It was very tasty.
25 a day.
Yep.
Champion,
exactly.
that.
But anyway. I lost my train of thought now. But cross. And how's cross working out for you in terms of Ironman training then, Chris? You've
It's a completely pointless mode of training for Ironman, but it's about keeping motivation high, right?
Don't tell your clients that, right?
No, I never tell my clients to go and race cross. I'm like, that's a terrible idea. Sit on your turbo, do some Zwift and get fit. No, just the physiological demands are so like polar opposites. You know, you need to be a steady state, high-end zone 2 athlete to be successful for Ironman. And then we'll go to cross on the other end, which is basically you get to do zone 2 when you're descending down a hill, and that's about it. And then everything else is like on the gas, 100% above threshold, pretty grim.
45 minutes to an hour of just absolute on.
It's great fun looking at power files actually, and being a bit of a geek and just like looking at normalized versus average, and usually it's like a huge variance, something like 15 to 25% difference between average and normalized. So although, you know, your average power might be lower, your actual physiological cost is going to be pretty great. And generally I wake up on a Tuesday morning and it feels like I've been run over by a bus, just in terms of the consequence of actually racing. Don't know if you used to find that, whether it was the day after or 2 days after.
Yeah, I used to feel just about okay by Wednesday. So I would feel probably worst on Tuesday after a cross race. Yeah, but do you get, have you ever had anyone had anyone come in specifically for a cyclocross fit?
We did actually, didn't we? There was a chap who had a really cool Ridley X night.
Yeah.
And he was like, all he wanted to do was race cross. That was a fun 4 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's pretty rare. Usually it's an afterthought or a second bike or something like that after they've bought a road bike, or they use their road bike position to kind of reference a cyclocross position, so on. So,
would you routinely do anything different if you were setting up for a cross fit? Are there any specific things you would change?
What's really interesting about our setup at the moment is that we've got the opportunity to actually watch them ride outside, which is really like that's changed loads of things for us in terms of fitting and seeing how people can actually handle their bike on the trails. So that's been quite nice. Done more mountain bike fitting than ever before, since we've had access to that, which is really nice. And so you might make a few little tweaks here and there based on what you see or how confident someone can be, how tense they are when riding outside. And ideally, I'd love to do that with everyone, just to see, you know, can they apply the skill that they have to, you know, the position, maintain that position? Will they be supple and smooth when they're riding outside? Can they control the bike? And you could spend a whole day doing that, really, but you know, you've got to make it practical at the same time. But generally speaking, I think for cyclocross, maybe in really general terms, maybe making the reach a little bit shorter, maybe handlebars a little bit higher, bring the saddle in a little bit like further forward, so maybe they're slightly lower, but centre of gravity is a little bit further forward, just so that they can move around the bike a little bit more. For those situations when they're off-road and negotiating the off-camber or kind of jumping on and off, things like that. And maybe some unusual things to think about, like saddle selection, where you're having to get on and off the bike. Yeah. Then what saddle you have can help or hinder that.
Some saddles just don't work at all.
Like, I usually ride like a SMP saddle on the road. And I just cannot.
You can't do
I can't do that. I was like, I've just.
You wouldn't be allowed to enter the race.
I know some people who do ride like SMPs with everything. I think probably Chris Beals probably rides.
He
SMP
probably does, yeah.
But shout out to Chris. But
you'd actually have to stop and climb on rather than jump on.
Yeah, the flying leap onto your saddle does not seem like
it's way too risky.
Yeah,
it'll be very precise.
Very, very precise.
I don't think cyclocross is very precise. So
no, not at all.
Flopping.
Point and shoot. Effectively.
Or you're going to be doing a lot of running. You'd probably run, wouldn't you, Matt, most of it?
That'd be quicker.
But yeah, how about you guys? Would you make any specific, or do you fit specifically for cyclocross, or have you had anyone?
Rarely get asked really, but I mean it's just gravel now, isn't it really? And a lot of gravel fits would be people who'd already had a road fit, so you can translate most of the positional stuff straight to a gravel setup really. With a, like you were saying before, maybe just make it a little bit more, potentially a little bit shorter, a bit more upright, maybe, but not necessarily, because you want the ability to ride for quite a lot of the time on the drops on a gravel bike. So yeah, rarely get asked for a cyclocross specific fit, but you might. Well, we often get asked for a gravel specific setup. Yeah, and certainly in terms of bike sales, we sell no cross bikes. But lots of gravel bikes.
I think you're just trying to keep the same elements, so you're trying to maintain. Well, once you factor in maybe a shorter crank length, you're trying to keep that same middle of the saddle to middle of bottom bracket. Effectively either back of the saddle or nose of the saddle, depending on how you measure, to the back of the hood, so that reach is the same, because body posture should look pretty much identical, but the orientation of the rider might change a little bit in terms of whether they're a little bit more forward rotated or back rotated, depending on whether it's a bit lower at the front end or higher at the front end. And then bar width, I don't know, I'm going to go out there and upset a lot of people, and I absolutely hate flared bars. I think they'd be thrown in the bin all at the same time and burned, and then we should actually accept that a road bar gives a much better wrist posture. Actually, I'm going to step back one step, not all of them, because there's some that the road position or the upper mount position isn't flared and the lower's flared. And I think that is acceptable. A fully flared mash-up wrist position is not good.
I was going to ask about gravel bars and what you chaps thought about that, but yeah, you beat me to it.
It just doesn't work. I mean, maybe practically it does for maybe steep descents or something, but it's just not. It's just flawed. I think even from what as Chris was saying, in terms of wrist position, it doesn't really work out that well, and in terms of being able to actually use the brakes effectively as well, I'm not sure if it's optimal. I think that one of the things I was thinking about actually before I came in today was the remember Shimano had those sub levers and they've gone, died a death. So why? Because that's the best thing that ever happened to cyclocross bikes for the Three Peaks was levers on the tops, because it changes everything. You can you can descend bits that you could never descend before because you can get your weight so far back, but it's gone for gravel bikes. But I think that's much more practical in terms of a good descending position with the ability to brake than a flared bar for sure. But where have they gone?
Yeah, I think
I've got a theory.
Go on, Jimmy.
Well, it's bar bags.
Exactly.
It is bar bags.
Exactly.
It is that,
and that's why flared bars are so popular, because it's
that
bar
a bar bag with nondescript contents, or maybe nothing in it. I don't know what people put in these things.
Jimmy's pointing at my bar bag.
But that trumps the ability to be able to brake efficiently on the descent.
This is true. But they did make when hydraulic braking came out for road bikes, they did make like a compatible.
That's what I'm talking about. The Shimano
hydraulic
sub levers, the Shimano ones.
But not available at all now.
I can't see them anymore. I don't think they're. I might be wrong, but I haven't seen them on a bike forever, and I haven't seen them on the Madison B2B for ages. I've got some on my Three Peaks bike, but they're not widely used. There must be a reason.
It'd still work with a relatively small bar bag, though, wouldn't it? Because the bar bag would just tuck under.
Well, I don't know.
Were you thinking about the routing of the cabling?
Yeah, well, I think it's just in completely the wrong place for the. I don't think you get your. Well, I suppose you could move them outboard quite a bit, so you can have them, but then they don't really work that well there.
It'll ruin the aesthetic.
Yeah. What you want to do is look really cool like me, and you want to get a bum bag. Turned up to a race recently, and one of the guys from the Sunday Social was like, "I thought better of you, Chris." And then and I haven't used it since. I've been so embarrassed.
An actual bum bag?
I've got a fanny pack.
Have you?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, a certain company.
Rage these days.
You can get a lot in them. Like I did a bike packing event, and you just keep your food in there, like stuff you need to get to quickly. And then so on the front you have like your sleeping bag or whatever, and then on the back you've got your snacks and your treats and your bottles, and you just look really cool. What are you laughing at?
Are you still going to finish the ride wearing a bum bag?
But the point is, you'll finish the ride because you've had easy access to your snacks.
Yes, this is true.
It's like it's almost on the same level as a bento box.
I mean, you're just taking a dig at the triathlete or what? So,
You haven't got one. No, you haven't got one on your.
No,
my California rolls and the Ironman are going to be off the chain.
when did bar bags become cool?
I don't know. It's just become part of the uniform, isn't it? It's a funny thing.
There's bar bags on time trial bikes now.
What?
Is it?
Yeah.
No, that's wrong.
Rolling around Girona, everyone's got a bar bag on their time trial bike.
What's in it though?
Probably loads of really expensive Morton gels.
Maybe, yeah.
Or cinnamon rolls.
Yeah, I don't
I
understand.
know which I prefer.
I mean, let's take an aero position and then put a massive bag at the front. Genius. Fantastic.
Time trial bike packing. It's a thing, supposedly.
Is it? I'm just not cool enough to know about this. I'm sorry. But surely you'd have a big saddle pack, because then the airflow round could actually improve the aerodynamics. What was it? Actually, a camelback effective or a fluid reservoir on the back improves aerodynamic flow, doesn't it?
Or
On the front.
Oh, is it on the front? Sorry. Yeah.
They're just about to ban that, aren't they?
just about to ban it, yeah. Because loads of people are doing it. So I think it was like the governing body for UK time trialling. They're just about to ban it because everyone's now smashing their 10 and 25 PVs because they've got essentially fairings on their body. So yeah, another thing that's going to be banned. You'd be fine for your Ironman though.
So I was actually thinking genuinely of getting a custom frame bag that improved the aerodynamics and filled out the frame. Because
Speed
again,
Speed fill, they did it.
someone already makes it.
There's a big tank.
Man, that was my retirement.
But to be fair, where you're going, Texas is going to be well humid. Probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think unless it's really strong crosswinds, because I'm going to be running a disc, and then that is probably going to punish you. I might as well just like set up a sail.
Yeah.
But yeah, in triathlon it's quite funny because there's basically no rules. It's great. You can do some ridiculous things with bikes and accessories and add-ons and get away with it. Like wearing your time trial helmet the wrong way around.
Seen it.
It's a good one.
Unfortunately.
It happens.
Yeah. It was you, wasn't it? Come on.
Pointy ends faster.
Tell us what's in the box, Chris.
It's in the box. Donuts. Oh, the box underneath. We have that absolutely ridiculous looking POC helmet, the Tempo, that they've all used on the Tour de France.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anytime you enter an event, it's just an excuse to spend money, right? So I noticed I needed a time trial helmet in my life. So I thought it's bright orange, so I'll be seen on the course. And I can wear one of those and look like an absolute tool. It's great.
Yeah.
But putting it on, you can see what it's going to do for body position straight away. Tucking into that thoracic spine or upper back, and how it's just going to smooth everything over. And then you just got to get used to your little shruggy shoulder position, because otherwise it's a bit negated.
But I guess people tend to often overlook the importance of helmet shape on their time trial positions as well. Any thoughts on that, Chris? As you've been searching for your POC helmet?
Well, I mean, mine was orange, and orange is my favourite colour, so that was my main reason for purchasing.
Yeah, it's important to note that bike fitters are not immune to all the aesthetic and emotional buying that everyone else does.
Not at all.
Do you get people, often get people bringing their time trial helmet in?
For the fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to, really, because you've got to look at what that person's going to be able to achieve, what their body contours are like as well, spinal position. And that's going to dictate whether they can get away with a short tail or a long tail. I think it's very rare I've seen something like a Casque Bambino truly be the most efficient helmet anymore. I don't know. I just think with body contours like that longer tail just allows a lot more leeway. If you run it, you kind of have to wear like your hat's pointing up towards the sky.
It's like tilting it, isn't it?
Yeah, you look like a complete and utter idiot in transition. But when you get on the bike, everyone's like, whoa. And then you get off and they're like, still doing a triathlon.
But that's a really good point. It's like if you've got a big, long, pointy helmet and you cannot keep that helmet in the position it's supposed to be, then potentially a safer, shorter tail helmet might be a better option.
Is that not we were talking about it earlier, weren't we? Like the specifics of distance versus position. You know, and you kind of have to compensate and put someone into a position they can sustain for 5, 6, 7 hours versus a position they can sustain for 25 minutes or something.
I think I'm more likely to recommend something that doesn't have a long tail just for that reason. Generally, it might be something to do with the clientele that we.
Maybe
the difference between the people who come and see us, but definitely just just in terms of being able to maintain a position which is reasonably good for the duration of the bike, taking into account that conditions can change. The wind direction can change. Well, it will, because it's not going to be just a point-to-point bike leg. So I probably would be more likely to recommend that something that wasn't too specific to a particular posture on the bike, assuming that they probably couldn't hold it for the duration of the bike.
And I think you have to kind of it's like different clientele, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's is a rider A willing to go through that period of adaptation and do things off the bike to get that kind of really nice posture with that long tail helmet that rider B might not be able or willing to do. It's just it's so specific. Like
I suppose
isn't it?
You kind of get an idea of whether or not that would be possible for the person, having spoken to them for probably an hour and a half before you actually look at them in depth on the bike. You get an idea of how their minds work, I think.
Yeah, I think I've had a bit of an anomaly in terms of the people who book in. I've had some really quite fast, talented riders come through, and they're strong. They can hold a good position. Big shout out to one of the guys that came in. He just got a time trial bike, never ridden time trial before. And he either came second or third at the 12-hour, averaging 40 kilometers an hour. And he's just like a 22-year-old kid or something. It's like, man, where are these kids getting these legs from?
That'll hurt in 10 years.
But positionally, he was just strong. He could suck it up. And he didn't even tell me he was doing that because I don't think it was on the cards. He entered it when he got drunk in the student union one night. So he went from a 1 hour position, but again was able mobility-wise and strength-wise to be able to hold that position.
I think that's our job as kind of bike fitters, isn't it? Is get to the bottom of what that particular client also wants, but also needs as well. It's like where's the middle ground of kind of optimal versus practical.
Yeah.
No two people are the same, as we know. You just got to call it as you see it.
Do you think it becomes a good motivator though for people? Like you've got a fancy new helmet, you're going to make it work.
I'm going to make it work. It costs me so much. I'm going to make it work. So, I think, it can.
Yeah, I think it's all part of it, isn't it? But I think you kind of, a lot of people will reach a certain level, then maybe reward themselves with something that's a little bit, better than they are at that particular point, and then work their way up to, So I think it's part of the whole thing. I think, isn't it? Equipment. I think it's a good argument for people who are new to it not to buy the best they can get straight away, which is a difficult conversation to have sometimes with someone who's keen to throw loads of cash at something. But where do you go once you've once you've spent all that money? I think you have to have somewhere to upgrade to over time as you improve.
It's kind of what we were talking about cross, a little earlier, wasn't it? It's just like get yourself a cross bike, whatever that might be. Like we've probably all had a kinesis with cantilever brakes at some point. Go and crash, for a couple of years, learn your craft, and then move on up. And your equipment grows as your competence grows. And it's a good motivator. Whereas you go straight in at 10, 12k on the latest super bike, you've got, like you say, you've got nowhere to go. And that's why we see people dropping out of the sport after 2-3 years, because it's just it gets boring. Right, on to the next thing. Yep. What's the next thing I can get my kind of dopamine hit from? And it's lose people through lack of longevity that way as well. So as I say, like being able and willing to have those difficult conversations as and when you kind of need to be. And it goes beyond bike fitting, really. It's just like right, we want you to enjoy this as much as possible. Have you considered X, Y, Z, all this kind of stuff? So it's like what we were talking about with Gillian in the last podcast. having that emotional intelligence and awareness to kind of communicate with that person.
That's boring, Matt.
Yeah, just buy an expensive bike.
I just buy an expensive bike.
I was having a moment there.
It was. I was very emotive.
Yeah.
So I was feeling it. I was feeling that.
So
energy.
a lot of people do treat Ironman specifically as something they'll only ever do once, don't they?
Yeah.
So, and in that situation, once you've gleaned that, bit of information, and even a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I'll see what happens after this one," but you can tell, they just want to cross it off the list and probably never do it again, which is fine. But and then they might as well spend 15 grand on it. Might as well. But it's kind of, like you say, it's getting that. It's kind of extracting that information, and then acting on it. I think, which is the difficult thing sometimes.
I mean, I'd always say to people, like, I do take the mickey out of triathlon, but I do seem to slip back into it because there is something.
As a former pro triathlete.
Yeah, it might be a different kind of like entry level when I step back in, but that's a different matter. But I mean, for those who haven't done like a load of triathlons, just stick to the short stuff, right? Because an Ironman training, like, if you really want to kind of nail it, it's going to take over your life. You
can't blag an Ironman.
You can't. You've got to be doing like 12, 15 hours of training. Otherwise, that race day is going to be horrendous. Whereas a 70.3, to be honest, you can do an Olympic. You could step up to a 70.3. Yeah. And same with sprint to Olympic. I would never say that anyone who could do a 70.3 could just step up to an Ironman, because it's not so much the swim and the bike. I think it's durability on the run. That people's tissue durability and connective tissue stuff just isn't at the level that it needs to be. And I think the run is what destroys people. Like if you're running fast, you're 3.5 hours. Right? If you're running slow, could you imagine spending 6 hours like hitting the floor, just pondering life choices, man?
That's probably what the majority of people who complete an Ironman do, isn't it?
Really is, yeah. You're looking at 5-6 hours.
But isn't it marketed that way? As something anyone can do.
It is marketed that way. It's brilliant marketing, but
Yeah.
it's really not something everyone can do, because mentally you have to be pretty driven, and you kind of have to appreciate you're going to go through some ups and downs during that race.
But then that goes back to that idea that a lot of people just treat it as something they'll only ever do once. They're just going to get through it and then never have to do it again.
Get a tattoo.
Yeah, get a tattoo, yeah.
This is all assuming that you make it to the start line as well.
Oh, thanks, Matt.
But that's
It's great to spend more time with you in a tiny room. So.
I'm a realist. What can I say?
You are right. Like, even racing like pro back in the day, you'd be going into every single event. You'd have some kind of niggle, and it's just. I remember I grew up in a really bad time for triathlon, because at the age of like 15 and 16, the Brownie brothers were racing against us, and my word, they were absolutely spanking us then. And but I remember there were a couple of races I saw them race, and I think it was Alistair won it, and then he's getting carried off because he was just like stress fracture riddled with injury. And it's like, so if you think a niggle is kind of where you're getting to the start line, those guys are carrying serious injuries, and it is that point of, I just need to make it through this race, I just need to make it through the next race. And when your life changes around, that is your source of income. Like, and then it's crossing over into that thing of pro cycling. If you can't do your job and you can't put food on the table for potentially a family, like, you're going to find a means around it, right? You're going to either continue to train injured, or you're going to turn to the dark stuff that people unfortunately kind of really do have to, because it's the only way they're going to be able to continue to do their living.
Yeah, I guess this is a question we ask people who come in to see us all the time. Is, you can do this, but at what cost? And this Ironman you're only going to do once. That's all well and fine, but do you know what you need to do, and where do you want to be afterwards? So it's kind of like holding up the mirror in many ways, and just being like, hey, just to let you know, this is going to happen. And those are the difficult conversations, and maybe more of the hidden side of bike fitting that, I guess we were talking a little bit earlier about how bike fitting becomes, or is, undervalued, it's just this thing that's never really historically or culturally been that valued. Not quite sure exactly why. I think everyone's got some theories and so on.
It's just always been assumed that you would get that done before you left the shop, if you see what I mean. So we were saying before, it's like, when you bought a new bike, someone in the shop would kind of hold you up on the bike and check that your knee was a little bit bent when your foot was at the bottom of the pedal stroke, and then nod sagely, and then and then send you on your way. But it was never really an event. It just kind of happened in the course of the bike sale. So it's never really been treated as something special or something that requires any particular amount of skill or
investment, isn't it, really? In terms of time and both on the part of the fitter and the rider.
Yeah.
But maybe just because we just didn't know, or everyone got away with it for such a long time that they didn't really realise that they could have been better, or they really needed this kind of bike fit.
That's exactly where I was. I didn't have a fit when I was racing pro. Got one afterwards. It's just like, what were you doing?
Yeah.
What were you doing? And I remember going into Jimmy actually, and Jimmy helped with the TT position, but I was constrained with sponsor stuff in terms of being able to get the position. So we couldn't get the saddle far forward enough.
Is that just because the bike geometry wouldn't allow it? Or?
Yeah, it just didn't. It had like almost it had a setback to the seat post on a TT bike and no ability to reverse that mount. It was kind of 2010 sort of time.
You still get that though. You still get that a lot with bikes that are marketed as triathlon bikes that are basically road TT bikes, so you can't get the saddle anywhere near far enough forward.
I mean, just touching on that, it's kind of the UCI limitation is 5 centimeters of nose to the bottom bracket, as far as I can remember. So, but triathlon, you could have it as +2. You could have it wherever you want, and it really does allow you to get a better position, being able to run that saddle further forward because it opens your hips. It allows you to create hip flexion or knee to chest movement, which then loads the glute, which then allows you to utilize the glute. And if you're really off the back of the bike, you find the pedaling action is very quad dominant, and you actually want to orientate that person a little bit further forward on the bike most of the time because it allows them to open hip, engage glute, as well as being able to use those quads to drive, And it's why you see when you watch a time trial in all the pro races and they're just shuffling forward, or that saddle is wedged so far up their posterior, and then they kind of edge themselves back to create stability of the pelvis, and then they just end up, moving forward. And I think it's a bit of an antiquated limitation on position. Really, because if they just allowed them to move further forward, you'll probably find that rider's body position would be exactly the same, but they'd just be able to stabilise their hips better.
Well, they're probably just taking the cyclocross mantra of inappropriate bikes, inappropriate events.
Yeah, I mean, they're already going 50 kilometres an hour, aren't they? So heaven knows what they'd achieve if they were in a solid position.
But then I guess it's like, different positions work at different ends of the race, right? You're at the pointy end of the race. You've got good core stability, good pelvic structure, and kind of able to create that stable platform, rotate your hips forward, all this kind of stuff, which allows you to achieve that more forward position. If you have the chap at as a mid-packer who's working 60, 70 hours a week sat at the desk, then you might need something different. You need to jack that front end up a bit, set him a little bit further back to achieve the same thing in terms of opening the hip, but in a more sustainable way.
Yep.
And I think it's like, you sort of were saying, Chris, you were limited by sponsors and kind of equipment and all that kind of stuff. When you're not limited and you have kind of choice, then that's kind of another interesting thing as well. It's like, just because we can, and the triathlon, I've got a bit of an axe to grind with this, but like the triathlon, the way triathlon bikes are marketed, that everyone needs that super slam forward position. Yeah. Well, not necessarily. And this is why we need adjustment.
Well, most people I see definitely do not need that low front end position.
Yeah.
And the conversation is quite difficult when their expectation of how they're going to look on the bike is completely different to the reality. I mean, that's usually the case anyway, regardless of the rider. When you show them themselves on the screen, they think
It's a dose of reality. Is that me?
Yeah. But more so with long distance triathlon, I think, because the how they think they should look is very different from the position that's going to transport them from the end of the swim to the start of the run in the best condition possible, which is what it's all about, really.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think bike designers need to kind of maybe do some triathlon. Just to say, right, what are these people who are actually buying our bikes going through, and what do they need? It'll never happen because it's marketing.
Yeah. But if they can subdivide the TT bike category like they have done with road bikes and off-road bikes and whatever, then there's an opportunity there, in terms of a commercial opportunity there. But I think of all the disciplines, that would be the hardest one to convince people that they need a more relaxed TT bike than the out and out
absolutely
race bike.
And then again, it's like it's those preconceived ideas that people come into. Certainly, I've had experience of this coming into a studio with a preconceived idea, and you're trying to not convince people, but show them that maybe that's not the best way forward, and that's hard.
It's really difficult.
That's really hard.
And sometimes you have to kind of not give up, but you have to stop at some point and say, look, this is where I think you'd be better off because of ABC, and so on, but you're obviously not happy with that, particular setup. So let's compromise. Let's go. But with the caveat that if you do ride in that position for 180k, then all these things are going to happen, and you're going to run slower probably. As long as you make that clear, then I think there is a jumping off point you can be kind of content with.
Decisions have consequences.
Absolutely.
But we look at who we hold in such high regard in the world of like Ironman, and we're always looking at those guys and girls that are going like sub-8s or 8.5, and the world champs. And to me, the heroes are the age groupers who are out there for 16 hours on a course, right? That pro athlete is finished in half the time. It's going through half as much suffering, right? And they're already fully trained. And this person who's doing 16 hours is, as you say, working a 40, 50, 60-hour week. And then they're trying to get 10 to 12 hours of training. And read an interesting thing the other day about the relative levels of training that you need to do for Ironman to make it comfortable, and the time you're going to finish. And the quicker you go, the less relative training you've got to do. Well, not the less relative, but the less total hours you have to do. So the heroes to me are those people who can suck it up for 16, 15, 14 hours in whatever heat, whatever temperature they're given. And they run across that line, and they're the happiest people in the world, and they've got their family next to them. Like, to me, that's commitment, and that is passion and motivation. And tell a top class athlete, just go out and do that again, same intensity. I'm pretty sure you know what the answer is going to be.
Well, didn't Phil say in his book, The Midlife Cyclist, he was saying that they studied how many hours of training kind of midlifers or like kind of plus 40 athletes, or not athletes but amateur athletes were doing, and it was far more hours of training than say the equivalent pro cyclist. And so the pro cyclist just has far more recovery time and gets looked after so much better because they don't have a job, and their job is the training, and they get the massage afterwards and all the recovery food and time and all the rest of it. So yeah, absolutely, like the relative effort that needs to go in to complete an Ironman event for an age grouper is like far more. But the question then is, like, does it need to be that way? Do you need to suffer through the 16 hours? What could you be doing to make your life like easier? And are you compromising that efficiency of work and training for, say, that fancy helmet that you just bought? or does it become, like going back to that question of motivation, it's like, I want to be a certain way on the bike. Like, what will I do to get there? I can see on the screen now, Jimmy's shown me on the screen that I am not where I want to be. What am I going to do to get there? Am I just going to buy more stuff? Or am I going to kind of train my body into a different way? Or, what is it, whatever it is?
I'd frame that question differently. It's like, what are you willing to do to get there?
Is that with an axe in hand?
Absolutely. The axe helps. But that's the thing, is it's like, what can I do and what am I willing to do are two very different things. And that's kind of where the rubber really meets the road, I reckon.
Yeah.
They'd probably be happier just doing cross, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
or something, you know. Is it? I don't know. It's a conversation you can try and get into with someone, isn't it? Is it worth it? You know, is the goal? Is it worth it? Because it's going to be pretty hard, and what you might end up with at the end of it might not be what you're expecting.
Well, most people who finish, expect this big high, and actually they end up with a big low.
It's a massive low.
Because the dopamine response is elicited in response to striving towards a challenge. So all your training, you're getting your dopamine pour out and kind of feel good, and then you complete that event. Unless you have another event to go to, you're going to have a big old crash. So I think, putting all this kind of motivation into a single event is also pretty dangerous, because people feel a little bit lost. And as you say, it's almost that, okay, I've got a 15 grand bike and I've just done an Ironman, and then they give up.
Yeah.
And whereas actually you're probably living a better lifestyle than you've ever lived before. Not that you have to maintain that same lifestyle, but maybe elements of very, very good to hold on to. So if you've done an Ironman, great, just sign up for an Olympic distance or a 70.3, because I tell you what, it's a lot less training, a lot more fun.
A lot less missed meals as well. Do a 7.3 between breakfast and lunch.
Oh, I thought you meant in preparation for keeping the race weight down. It's like, now you're surfing another
race weight is
topic.
a topic that is, let's not get into that today.
No.
But it's that intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. It's like, why are you actually doing this? So anyway, I was about to go on another rant, but Wei signaling the 5-minute warning.
Where's the alarm?
I thought I'd ask you, put you on the spot, Chris, but what's your motivation then for this Ironman? You haven't done an Ironman before.
Never done an Ironman.
First Ironman?
First one, yeah. Don't know. I was never very durable as a runner. That basically ruined my career. So it's kind of always, I did some 70.3s, but never stepped up to iron. And I thought, I've kind of point in my life, I've sort of got the time to give, and I'm probably not going to have this much time again. So it's kind of thought, well, let's just get it done. And I'll speak to the wife and just say, can I do an Ironman? And she said yes. And I was like, great. And then, nuts at the same time. But
actually,
for me,
you just got married, didn't you? So
did you just get married?
Did you do that before?
I did it in the wedding speech. No, I didn't. That would have been a terrible wedding speech. So. No, I asked afterwards. And I think it's just, it just felt like I wanted to give it a go. And I think you have to, as a fitter as well, you almost have to have the experience and insight and understanding and kind of just live it. Otherwise, you can give all the advice in the world, but if you don't have personal experience, then you're kind of just reading from a textbook. And I think that's poor understanding. So in response to your question, the A goal is sub 9.5. The B goal is sub 10, and the C goal is to finish. I'll let you know how that goes. So.
Sounds like you can just put it on work expenses then.
No comment.
So based on that, when's your Ironman, Jimmy?
Never going to happen, I'm afraid. No, it just doesn't appeal to me whatsoever.
You're not going to be my supporter?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'll support you, but I'm not going to. Unless you fly me to Texas.
You can do the ice creams.
It's just never, it's never appealed to me whatsoever. I can swim, but I haven't got the time or inclination to get any good at it. And the same with running, really. Just whenever I've done any running, I've just felt the drop off in enjoyment and performance on the bike. Not so much anymore, but when I was road racing more, I would definitely feel that kind of snappy power disappear quite quickly if I ever did any running. So no interest really.
Cool.
Sorry.
It's all about no, don't be sorry. It's all about figuring out what works for you. All right. On that note, there's still 2 more bits of donut there.
There are 2 more. We haven't even asked about you. What's your next event?
My next event?
Or something you aspire to do?
Can I just resurrect the memory of your first cross race? Am I allowed to do that? I think if I look very carefully, I could probably find a photograph of it as well. But you were on your what was that bike? Calf and back. Yeah.
Planet X.
And I seem to remember you losing your bike computer somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was at Chainhurst Farm in Kent. Yeah, and it was highly entertaining for everyone apart from Wei, I think.
It was an absolute obliteration of any ego.
It was really funny.
And, I'm not sure if it wasn't. I think it was Herne Hill I threw up at the end.
It's the standard Herne Hill racing.
It was just
Happy days.
Yeah, it didn't put me off somehow, but I think it was your fault for dragging me around.
They don't use that venue anymore, don't think.
Yeah.
Still also remember seeing you at Mountain Mayhem a couple of times, 24-hour mountain bike races.
Yeah.
Those were dark days.
Yeah, I did a lot of racing. I was never any good, but I did a lot. And just flopping around in the mud mostly. Better than falling off on the road. But yeah, good times.
Taking part.
I'll see if I can dig out that photo.
I'm sure I can find it.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
Bikes are a mode of transport now for me.
You got running.
Yeah, so I'm trying to crack the marathon.
Yeah,
it's not going well, but yeah, we'll see. So probably did race far too much triathlon for a healthy kind of balance of life. So but I'll never say never. 95% retired, but we'll never say never. But yeah, next sort of 4 years or so, trying to crack the marathon, run a decent one. But yeah, I've got to get to a start line first. That's plan A. So yeah, we'll see. But now I'm just quite happy hacking around town on my mountain bike. Happy days.
Enough about butts. Good stuff. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Cheers, lads. If people want to find out more about you guys, where can we find you, Jimmy?
Cyclefit.
Cyclefit.co.uk.
Yeah, on West Central Street in Bloomsbury. Yep.
Good stuff. And Chris, where?
I am at cyclingperformance.co.uk and based in Kingston upon Thames.
Good stuff. And you're a bike fitter, but also coach and
triathlon cycling coach. We do VO2 max assessments for running and riding, and strength and conditioning coach as well.
Yeah, nice one. All right, good stuff. We'll catch you on the next pod. All right, cheers,
thanks,
lads.
James.
Thank you.
Ta.
Well, I don't know about you, but I thought that was quite interesting. Follow us on Instagram at SoftTissuesPod. And as always, thanks for listening, go ride your bike and join us for the next one.